Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, one and all, back to the channel if you've been here before. If you haven't, then welcome for joining me in this wonderful episode. So, for this episode, I figured that I would continue talking about some mechanics that you might see as a starting player, as well as some cards, and just kind of going over certain aspects of the game to kind of help just feed information a little by little. So today, one of the things, as you can see, is I'm going to talk about planeswalkers and what they actually are. Planeswalkers were introduced all the way back in the first Lorwyn set, and I say first because supposedly we are going to be going back to Lorwyn sometime soon, which should be pretty exciting. Honestly, it's been a minute. Kind of personally kind of tired of going back to Ravnica, so let's give Ravnica a break here. We've been back a lot. So with that, let's talk about what planeswalkers actually are. Planeswalkers in the world of Magic the Gathering are beings that have a special thing called a spark in them. And under certain moments in their life, this spark basically ignites and it awakens. And they have a longer life. Original planeswalkers were pretty much gods and immortal based on what I remember from the actual lore of most planeswalkers. They were extremely powerful and gifted spellcasters. So when they ignited, they also have the ability to travel basically from world to world through what they call the blind eternities. They're able to basically open up a portal, and as long as they can mentally envision the world, they can step through this portal and go there. Kind of like Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is a good way to think of a planeswalker as far as in the world of Magic the Gathering. Now, since this huge war happened with the Phyrexians, it has greatly changed the whole aspect of the planeswalkers. Some planeswalkers are still active and have their planeswalker spark. Still others have lost the spark and either are trapped in a world that they don't know or trapped in their home world, and they're having to use different means to travel through the blind eternities, and that's a whole thing you could kind of dig into and go through the proverbial rabbit hole, if you will. Now, for the purpose of the actual card game itself, and the actual cards that you could go buy from booster packs, whether it be in person or even digitally through Magic Arena / online, they are cards or that you can play, obviously, but they are permanents. So when you play a planeswalker, unless somebody bounces the spell or counters the spell, your planeswalker, upon resolution, will come into play and be a permanent on your battlefield. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Well, they look like creatures. Can they attack? No. Can they defend me? No. They don't have a power or toughness down here. They just have what we call a loyalty counter. And most of your planeswalkers will have at least one way to uptick this loyalty counter by a certain number. Several have down ticks to do other effects. Looking at where my cursor is right now, Ajani, Color of the Pride. So Ajani is one of the original planeswalkers that we were first introduced to. So if you want to do his first ability, you would put a +1, so this would go up to a 5 after he comes into play with just 4. So you would play him, and if nobody has any responses, you get a chance to activate his ability. So if nobody has done anything to your Ajani, you say, okay, I would like to +1 Ajani. So then he would go from 4 to a 5. Put a 1/1 counter on up to one target creature. So then you would pick a creature that you control and put a 1/1 counter on it. You could put a counter on somebody else's thing if you want to as well. Kind of a little political if you feel a little politically with this one. But a very key thing to look at with this one in particular is it says on up to one target creature. So it doesn't say just put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, it's up to. That means even if there's no other creatures on the battlefield, you could still use his plus ability and not be punished by it. You don't have to have a what we call a valid target to use this ability. You can literally just play him, plus him, and pass the turn if there's nothing else happening on the battlefield. There's no other creatures. So let's do the negative. So if you've got a board and maybe it's closing and you're trying to end the game, whether it be commander or standard, modern, wherever you're playing this Johnny. So maybe instead of plussing him, you go to minus him. So you would say, I'm going to -3 my Johnny. So then he goes from a 4 down all the way down to a 1. Target creature gains flying and double strike until end of turn. Pretty devastating, really, when you think about it. Like that could hurt somebody pretty bad in the long run. So maybe late game you drop this and you could do your thing, and you can hurt somebody pretty bad with that because that'll give them flying and double strike. First of all, flying is hard enough to block. There's not many creatures that are squeezing into decks these days that allow you to have something that can block a flyer. And double strike is another potent ability. The way double strike is going to work is a very detailed thing that I can go into later. Simply put, double strike means we're going to deal our damage to your creature first before you can even think about dealing damage to my creature. Then if your creature survives, then we go to a regular combat step, which means now it's going to be like you're used to seeing, where they both can deal damage to each other. And there's more intricacies to that, so we'll go into that at another time. But in the world of Commander, let's say, so if you just continuously +1 these Planeswalkers, and this is Johnny in particular, you can eventually get to his -8. Now, I will say, you can only use their abilities once a turn unless something else is manipulating that, giving you the ability to activate them more than once a turn. There is one card off the top of my head, I know for a fact, will do this. And it's called the Chain Veil. Very powerful artifact. Goes great with Planeswalkers. So you're going to look at 4 turns of him having to stay alive and doing the plus ability to get to this really powerful negative. Most of your Planeswalkers, they're what we're going to call their ultimate, which is their most powerful negative ability, are usually pretty backbreaking, and they're like, oh man, what happened? So, like, in this case of a Johnny Caller of the Pride, you can -8. So you would take 4 turns plussing him. So in theory, by turn 7, he has reached +8. So then on turn 8, you can minus all 8 of those counters. But do remember, if this number over here, this bottom right hand corner, that goes down to a 0 or less, your Planeswalker is dead. So if you -8 and he has no other counters, he only has those 8, he will go to the graveyard. But you get this ability. And this ability is you're going to create X, 2/2 white cat creature tokens, where X is your life total. Well, in mono white, they specialize in getting a bajuku, amazing amount of life. So that's not completely unreasonable to have quite the established army. So maybe if you're having like a splash of red, you have the ability with haste to attack. If you're mono white, maybe you have a bunch of ways to protect your board from any kind of board wipe that's coming, such as like a Wrath of God, Day of Judgment, anything like that. You never know. So after you've -8 and his loyalty is now gone, he will go to the graveyard. the important thing to note about a Planeswalker, they cannot attack or block for you. However, your opponent may attack them, and they may play things like a shock or a lightning bolt. And instead of targeting you, they can target the Planeswalker, and there you go. They can knock for every point of damage that your Planeswalker takes, they will lose a counter. So you gotta make sure that your Planeswalker has ways to stay alive, creatures to defend him, to hopefully keep doing what you're trying to do. Now, in Modern Horizons 3, they've reintroduced what we call the Flipwalkers, and it can be a little confusing. Your normal Planeswalkers, like the ones over here on the left-hand side, they literally will say Planeswalker Ajani, Planeswalker Ajani. And they say Ajani because, well, his name is Ajani. Pardon me. And something they started doing around 2020 was they started adding the legendary part to them because they are legendary beings. But going back to this, the printing of Modern Horizons 3, they reintroduced our flip Planeswalkers. Now, these are tricky because they do come into play as a creature. They can attack and block for you. It is a 1/2 creature. But when you mate his stipulation down here in the bottom of his text box here, he actually will flip over. So his first thing, when he first comes into play, when Ajani Nakatal Pariah enters the battlefield, create a 2/1 white cat warrior creature token. So when you play him, you're going to get another body with him. And then, whenever one or more other cats you control die, you may exile Ajani and then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. So if something happens to this little cat warrior creature token that you make when he comes into play, you get to remove him from the battlefield for just a split second and flip him over into his Planeswalker side. And then he has your typical Planeswalker abilities. He has a plus, he actually has a 0, and then a powerful -4. That's traditionally how your Planeswalkers look, is they have some kind of a plus and at least 1 or 2 negatives. This Ajani over here actually has 2 pluses and 1 very big negative. If you are very curious, his -8 is you gain 100 life. Ridiculously stupid. I've never seen anybody do it, but I bet you it's hilarious when somebody does. Now, a few years ago now, way back in 2019, we went to the War of the Spark. And you can read up more about the story. It's a very good storyline, I think, and it was a lot of build-up. So you might actually have to go pretty far back in Magic's history to learn more details about what actually happened to create War of the Spark. And that was a very fun set, I think. But some of their Planeswalkers in this set actually had a static ability here that made them more like an enchantment than just a regular Planeswalker. This Ajani, for instance, just being on the battlefield gives all your creatures vigilance. Now, vigilance in the world of Magic the Gathering means they don't have to turn sideways to attack. So you can attack and have it to block with. It could be a very potent ability to have on a creature, let alone your entire battlefield. His plus ability is not that great. You gain 3 life. His -2 is you put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control, and each other Planeswalker you control will get a loyalty counter. So he won't plus himself with this ability because it says each other Planeswalker. So if you have, like, I don't know, 3 of these other Ajani's over here next to him, they all get another loyalty counter without using any of their abilities, just using this Ajani from War of the Spark. So it was a pretty interesting thing. Some of the War of the Spark Planeswalkers were way more powerful, way more broken than others. So kind of do some digging and look and see what you like, what you don't like. There's a lot of them. We also got the introduction of uncommon planeswalkers. Typically, your planeswalkers are a mythic. Usually, some are a rare, but generally they are a mythic level. Seeing where my cursor is, if you don't understand mythic, it is the highest rarity in Magic the Gathering, being this dark orange red kind of color. Your rarity breaks down as a mythic. This Elspeth actually, nope, that one is actually still a mythic, but this Ajani that we were looking at earlier would be considered a rare. It has more of a gold color where his set symbol is. The Antgrath down here would be an uncommon because his set symbol is silver. And then, of course, if it's jet black, then that would mean it is a very common card. But this Angrath down here is another one from War of the Spark. And again, he has an ability that makes him more like an enchantment because creatures you control have menace, meaning they have to be blocked by two creatures or more. They cannot be blocked by just a simple creature. Again, a pretty potent ability if used correctly. But as you can see, there are multiple different planeswalkers to choose from, and all of them do something that can just be backbreaking to your opponent in the right build. There was there are even some from a what we like to call a joke set or the unset. As you can see here, this is Bob. He is from the Infinity set, I believe. I believe that's Infinity. Forgive me, I never really got into that set. I'm not a fan of that kind of thing. But your planeswalkers have wonderful, powerful abilities generally. There's one or two that are very like underwhelming, and it kind of reflects with their actual card price because they just don't really see a lot of play. This is from the set Kaladesh. This is Chandra, Fire of Kaladesh, which actually has been renamed for the set fixing to come out, Aether Drift. So Kaladesh is actually not correct anymore. But this was one of the first times we actually get to see, if not the first time, we got to see the Flips Planeswalkers. Actually, no, that was not the first time we got to see Flip Planeswalkers. The yeah, it is. Yeah, this is Origins, not Kaladesh. My apologies. This is Origins, and Origins was where we first saw the Flip Planeswalkers. So when you meet her requirements down here in this gigantic text box, she will flip over into Chandra, Roaring Flame. So Chandra is another one of the very first Planeswalkers we got to see and experience. There was a total of 5, one for each color. They are really good cards, and I enjoy them when they were first introduced. They were a little confusing, but as the years have gone by, I have come to really enjoy some of them, and I like some of the aspects they can bring to the world, especially the game. So they have a lot they can offer. A lot of them have quite the interesting story and background to them. Some of them are a little incomplete. Like I really generally feel like Garuk's is a little off, and it's not quite uh, where you would think it should be, if that makes any sense. He uh, he definitely he definitely has like a weird background to him. He's supposed to be like a druid, if you will, but he's like ridiculously huge and like enjoys the hunt. So kind of weird that a druid is like out hunting beasts and everything. And as you can see, Homeboy is ridiculously huge. the professor over at the Tolarian Community College YouTube channel actually did a skit about Garruk several years ago now. And if you haven't seen it, if you don't know about the professor, you got to go check out his channel. He is absolutely hilarious, full of information, and one of the YouTubers I've been following for a very very long time. Gideon, he was a very good Planeswalker when he was introduced. So we have a lot of different Planeswalkers that you can choose from. This is actually one of the other new card types that was recently introduced with March of the Machine, and this is called a battle. So if we click on it, it actually will bring it up so we can actually read it properly. So this is a battle siege, and as you can see, as a siege enters, choose an opponent to protect it. You and others can attack it. When it's defeated, exile it, and then you get to cast it transformed. This is important because there is one in particular that I know of that I use and I enjoy using called the Invasion of Tarkir. Now, when it gets defeated, it flips over to a 4/4 dragon. And if you're playing a commander by the name of Mirim Sentinel Worm, which I enjoy playing, her ability is whenever another non-token dragon enters your battlefield under your control, you get to make a token copy of it. And it's non-legendary, so if it was a legendary dragon, now I got two of them and one of them's not legendary. That's important because in Magic, the legendary rule means you cannot have two permanents of the same name that are legendary. Well, if they have the same name and one's legendary and one's not, we're not in violation of this rule. If you are in violation of this rule, then you must choose one of those permanents to keep and the other is sent to the graveyard. It is not destroyed, so anything that says protect it, destroy effects cannot kill it, won't matter. It will be sent to the card graveyard. Getting back to the way that a battle is. So this battle, for instance, I'm going to cast this battle and I'm going to choose you to defend it. So it's under your control. It's on your side of the battlefield. And I do its ability, so when Invasion of New Phyrexia enters, create X 2/2 white blue knight creature tokens with vigilance. X will be however much mana you put into it up here in the top right. So you at least have to be able to pay a blue and a white, and you could pay 0 if you're really just trying to get your battle out there and flip it. But you could pay any number into this X, and you get that many bodies. So it's relatively good. So if I was able to attack said battle with, I don't know, a 6/6 dragon, for instance, that you couldn't block, it's now going to go from a 6 down to a 0. And look at that. It's actually a Planeswalker. It transforms into Teferi, a Kosa of Zhalfir. So, and this Teferi seems pretty good. Not the best, but he seems pretty good. He's more for like a Knights Tribal build, which there was a pre-con for that, so maybe he kind of squeezes into there. I won't really go into the details, but you can pause it here for a moment and read him over and decide if you like him or not. Moving on and moving forward, Jace Beleren. He is the first mono blue Planeswalker we were introduced to. This is better known as Party Jace because his +2 is everybody gets to draw a card. So in a way, you're kind of hugging everybody. Everybody feels really great. Until you get to this -10 and you have somebody mill 20 cards. Now mill means you're going to take the top card of your deck and throw it straight to the graveyard. So, and mill was actually just recently put into terms of official Magic the Gathering. It wasn't that way before. His original printing, way back here in Lorwyn, actually has the best description of it. So the current version of him says target player mills 20 cards. His original printing says target player puts the top 20 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. That is what we used to do. When you've been playing for a while, like I have and several others that I know, you would just call it milling. And over the years, it has caught on, and Wizards of the Coast has officially added it to the rules box. So now, instead of having this gigantic box full of text down here, it's just simplified into one word: mill. But Jace is one of the stronger planeswalkers in mono blue. We have several different versions of him. Again, Magic Origins, we have a very powerful flip Jace. As we continue just kind of scrolling through and just kind of perusing some of the planeswalkers that are around, you can kind of get a pretty good idea of what's what. And, you know, when you use something like Moxfield, it's pretty easy to just type in planeswalker and you can do like I'm doing and just kind of peruse through and look at all the planeswalkers that are there. Liliana, she was another one of our original planeswalkers that first appeared into the game. And she was our mono black planeswalker, as you can tell. No, I don't want Liliana the Veil. Very good card, very fun and powerful card, but that's not what we want. We want this, Liliana Vess. This was the original version of her. And the original version of Chandra was just called Chandra Nalar. So they even made some commander decks where this planeswalker can be your commander. Lord Windgrace was one of them, and he's probably one of the stronger planeswalkers to use as your commander, other than something like Minkskin Boo. Minkskin Boo over here is pretty slap in the face. Like, not gonna lie, Minkskin Boo is a little scary. Then we have the big baddie of the Magic the Gathering multiverse. The whole reason War of the Spark even had to happen. Nicol Bolas. So Nicol Bolas, when he was introduced as a planeswalker, was actually down here. Nicol Bolas the Planeswalker. This was his first printing, but it wasn't this actual art or anything like that. He was printed in Alara. I'm trying to remember if it was the No, I don't think it was Conflux. Yeah, it was. It was Conflux. Look at that. I can remember things. I mean, good God, it was from 2009. Huh. I was out in college at that point. Anyway, this was his original artwork and original printing. I think this is by far better than the redo that they did. But this was one of the first multicolored planeswalkers we got, and I really think he's powerful. He does a lot of terrifying things to people. Great, we got to start all over again. Super Scroll, all the way back down to Big Daddy Bolas. And he's had a couple of iterations over the time, including getting his own flip version, which is just mean if you ever get to pull this off. You can win this way, actually, or you can just really cripple somebody. His -12. Exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. There is a way you could do that and win. There's a couple of cards that do that. But typically, if you hit somebody with this, they're going to be very sad and salty people and just kind of be like, well, I'm out of this game. Have fun, guys. Nico Ares here is our first gender-neutral planeswalker. I would actually say that this is a very underwhelming version of him. I believe the new version of Nico is far more powerful. I don't believe it's a creature though. I believe it's just a. No, I don't believe it's a planeswalker. I believe it's just a creature. This is kind of underwhelming, but I mean, I guess the way that Nico works in that and this one, you might could use both in the same deck. And then we have Nissa. Nissa is our mono green planeswalker that has seen quite a bit in her time. but she's not the first mono green planeswalker we were introduced to. That was Garuk. He was our first. They did kind of a weird thing here when we went to back. What did we go back to? I don't even remember. When we went back to this world, Eldraine. We went back to Eldraine. We no, it wasn't Eldraine. It was Balga. So we can't. What did we go back to? It was our first trip to Strixhaven. That's correct. Okay, I was close. I knew, but I couldn't think. Anyways, we went to Strixhaven, which if you haven't heard of that set, is actually quite interesting. It is the Magic the Gathering version of Harry Potter. Simply put, it was a school of magic, and everything had a color pairing. This is actually Liliana in disguise as Professor Onyx, which is why if you look here, it doesn't say Planeswalker Onyx, it says Liliana. So she was undercover and running for her life, basically. I won't tell a whole lot more about it, so you can actually read about this background and lore. Raul, he was very, very interesting as a character when he was introduced. Rowan and her brother Kenrith. You can read up on all of these planeswalkers and find their background and stories. Now this is my favorite planeswalker, Sarkhan. So when we were first introduced to Sarkhan, it was this version right here, Sarkhan Vol. No surprise, I'm the Buddha Dragon of Magic the Gathering. I'm actually known as the Dragon King in my area for a very good reason. I like dragons. Simply put, guess what? My boy Sarkin, he likes dragons too. And he does very good things with powerful dragons. So, hooray, Sarkin. Love my Sarkin boy here, and I'm very excited that we're going back to his homeworld, Tarkir, which was an entire dragon-based set. I cannot wait to go. We go there in April, I believe, and it's going to be a blast, personally. Some of the walkers you're seeing here are only available on online. Like this Sarkin right here, he does not exist in actual cardboard, which is kind of a shame. I think he'd be fun to have as an actual cardboard version of it. Though I think you would have to say like create a Shivan Dragon creature token maybe versus just adding a Shivan Dragon into your hand. So I don't know. Soren, he is a planeswalker who's also a vampire, and we actually don't know how old he is. We really don't. So that's a little terrifying when you really think about it. Dude is wicked powerful as a planeswalker, and he's a vampire. Oh boy. Savitri, the Dragon Master, she can be your commander. Really enjoy this planeswalker as well. Let's keep on going down. Tamio, she is a moon folk planeswalker. We have Tasha, who can also be your commander. She was from the Boulder Gate set. The Master of Time himself, Teferi. Our first introduction of Teferi as a planeswalker was right here, the Temporal Archmage. And since then, they have just kind of reprinted him in like some very different ways, but most of them have to deal with something about manipulating a turn. Setting somebody back, taking extra turns, making so people have to obey certain restrictions. Like this one, each opponent can't cast. Each opponent can cast spells only anytime they can cast a sorcery. Meaning, during my turn, you can't touch me. So he's very scared, scary to see. Tezzerets are resident. can almost call him an android because he uses artificer magic to make his body. He's a artificer, and he served our big baddie, Mr. Nicobolas. I think this is probably his best version, is Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, followed by Tezzeret the Seeker. Tezzeret the Seeker allows you to go find artifacts based on how many of his loyalty counters you take away. And then this one is just not fun. I mean, his plus ability. Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of artifacts you control and you gain X life. What? Oh no! Horrible! Now we have to come down to the Wandering Emperor, who has a very interesting story in her own right, too. Probably the most laughed at and underrated and undesirable Planeswalker is Tibalt the Fiend-Blooded. Yeah, he's a 2-drop. He comes in with 2 loyalty. Not that impressive. His abilities are okay. I mean, if you're doing for like a chaos build or, you know, some weird shenanigans or something, he might be kind of interesting. He might have it home. But generally, everybody laughs at this version of Tibalt. I mean, as you can see, even this special dual decks version of him is 58 cents. Pretty laughable. We've come down to who many veteran players of the game call Eugene, or Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, who, spoiler alert, according to lore, is actually Ugin's twin. No, he's Bolas's twin brother. I won't spoil more about their background. You can actually read up their background and story way back when we went to Tarkir. I really, really, really enjoyed the story that we had there for that set. It left me wanting more of it. So, Ugin is the twin brother of Nicobolas. You have what a lot of people like to call Baby Eugene or Little Ugin, who likes to help colorless things. He is the colorless Planeswalker. If I'm not mistaken, he's one of the few that we actually have. The other one, I believe, is Karn. I don't think we have any others but those two, so it would be kind of nice to get another 1 or 2 colorless Planeswalkers. So, Big Ugin over here is usually a uh-oh when he hits the battlefield. So people don't like Big Eugene when he hits the battlefield. He is horrifying for others to see. I mean, his negative right here, just a negative X. Exile or remove from the game each permanent with converted mana cost X or less that's 1 or more colors. Simply put, if we choose to -5 this Eugene, every Planeswalker that you can see in this screenshot right now, but this other Ugin, will be removed from the game. All of them. And it is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. He doesn't hit colorless things, and he doesn't hit artifacts. Because generally artifacts have no colors. So he's absolutely terrifying. His plus ability is a +2. A +2, and he already comes into play with 7. So you can deal 3 damage to anything. So if a Planeswalker is weak, you can shoot it with Ugin. You could shoot somebody in the face with Ugin. That's pretty backbreaking. He only has to live for 2 turns, and on the 3rd turn, you can do his -10, and he will still have 1 counter left. He will go from 11 all the way down to 1, and you can gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and put up to 7 permanents from your hand onto the battlefield. Oh my god! This means you're able to draw 7 cards, and you could spit out 7 dragons, elves, more planeswalkers, enchantments or artifacts to lock down the battlefield. You could do so much. So as you can see, going over this Eugene, you can imagine how terrifying it is to see somebody play that and go, no, that has to go, that has to die. So he's one of the bigger, badder planeswalkers. I think that if you see hit the battlefield, you have to get rid of it. It has to go. Um, so we finish up by looking at the rest of the planeswalkers though, and before anybody has the chance to ask, these cards over here, any of them that have this kind of weird wonky picture that doesn't look like a Magic card, these are test cards that you can open in Magic the Gathering Mystery Boosters. These are cards that potentially might one day become reality, or maybe they were just kind of jokes and they're like, okay, we can't really make this card. Like, this thing's ridiculous, guys. Come on, let's not do this to the players. So maybe one day we'll see some of these things become a reality. Maybe we won't. So that's kind of the lowdown of a Planeswalker. They are a permanent on the battlefield. They cannot attack or block. They can be attacked. They can be dealt damage. You can typically use a Planeswalker's ability only once a turn, unless something acts upon that, making you do it more than once, such as the Chain Veil. The fun thing about a Planeswalker is how well it can synergize or completely flip a game. So it can either synergize very, very well with your deck, or like if you drop the Ugin just because you needed something to have some kind of board wipe and you like Ugin, you drop an Ugin and just nuke the battlefield and say, haha, we all start over. I mean, you could be that mean if you really feel like it. So there's there's some good planeswalkers, there's some bad planeswalkers. I kind of believe like all of them have a home in general. It's just a matter of can you find a home for them. Not every planeswalker, not every deck needs a planeswalker, excuse me, but they, as a general rule of thumb, they can help the deck fill a hole that exists when you don't have a better option or another way to do that. So generally, planeswalkers are pretty okay. As I've said in a previous video, I actually have a friend of mine who really kind of doesn't like planeswalkers, and that's fine. That's his choice. And he can like or dislike whatever he wants to. He's a free man, free person in this world. I tend to like him for the most part. Some of them I judge very harshly, going they should have changed that ability or limited it, or maybe you know fix the loyalty counters required for that, or that he comes into play. Some of them are just so hard to deal with. It becomes rather annoying. I guess the last thing I want to show everybody, you've probably heard me talk about it before in some of my other videos, as to why I always have a piece of land destruction in my decks. Well, this is why. This is the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale. As you can see, it is a very spicy card. So let's look at one of the more recent printings. So the actual card text is over here and can be a little confusing. Here's the actual like official modern day update to the rules text. All creatures have at the beginning of your upkeep, destroy this creature unless you pay 1 mana. So if you had a board of like 20 1/1 elf creature tokens, you must pay 20 mana to keep all of those elf creature tokens or they all die. And that's before you even do anything. That's untap all your stuff, upkeep, then you draw. So as soon as you untap, you either pay all this mana to keep your battlefield on the battlefield, or some or none. Like it's a pretty back-breaking card. You don't see a whole lot of them out in the wild. for kind of good reason. I mean, $3,000 for this card is insane. My God, that's insane. So you don't typically see these out in the wild. However, I do have a friend that runs two of them. And one of them, he's very evil. So that's what we nicknamed him. His nickname is Evil Neil. Shout out to my good friend there, who's been playing the game for way longer than me. He's been playing since day one. Anyways, Evil Neil likes to play a land destruction deck when people think they've been having a great time for the night and think highly of themselves. He likes to bring out what we call no man's land and shut down everybody. He will blow up all your lands. He will have artifacts so he can still play the game, and he will drop a tabernacle and just smile. And you would be amazed how many people don't have a way to get rid of this card, and their whole game falls into pieces because they cannot keep anything on the battlefield but maybe a handful of creatures. So, because of that situation, I always recommend something like a demolition field, field of ruin, or anything that says destroy target land in your deck, especially in the mana base. It's a free spot. It can still make mana, especially with like something like Urborg or Yavimaya out, so you can still make mana off the card, so it won't be a completely dead card. But it definitely allows you to have a way to interact with things like this. There's other land cards that are very backbreaking that do similar kind of things. Um, Glacial Chasm a lot means you can't deal damage to that player. They have a way to keep it or recur it back from the graveyard. It can be like a walk. So those are two of the bigger like lands. So while it's unlikely anybody will ever play this because of the high price tag, if anybody ever actually drops this, let alone a proxy version of it, just know you need to get rid of it ASAP, because if you don't, you're probably not going to win that game. But with that, I guess we will bring this video to a close. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about Planeswalkers. Do you like them? Do you not like them? Is there anything you need clarification on about a Planeswalker? More importantly, I have some ideas for a new deck I want to brew, and I'm probably going to make a video for. So, what are some off-the-wall deck ideas you might have that you're not quite sure how to do? So maybe you could pitch it to me, and I'll make a video about it, and we'll see what we can come up with. That's actually how one of my other friends does quite a bit of their deck builds. He pitches like these off-the-wall ideas, and I'm like, at first going, I don't know how that works. I don't know how this would work. And then before you know it, he can see the gears in my head turning, and he just kind of chuckles, and he's like, "Oh God, what do you got up your sleeve?" And well, before you know it, we've created something either totally wild, off the wall, janky, or a complete monster. It's never really something in between. So yeah, definitely leave me a comment about something you're trying to do in Magic, or you want to do in Magic, but you're not sure how to do it. I'll do some digging and see what we can do to try and get as close, if not right on that target. So like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel. Put me on mute if you have to, and just let the video play all the way through. Help me appease the mighty overlords of YouTube and their algorithm. With that, don't forget, rub that belly for mana, and may your games be rich with luck.